I would love to talk about the course you want to teach and your
Mhm.
journey and the beautiful world was possible in your heart that
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
bring into being.
So I was thinking it's the art of the possible. And so I have some talking points like a possibilitarian is, or
Okay.
what it means. A possibilitarian is this
All right.
sort of
Give me the
stance.
question.
Or yeah, I'm just ready to riff. Like I'm more intellectual than I think I am.
I have a list of hypotheses. Like, oh, I like the hypotheses. I like the hypotheses. Let me open up my book to my hypotheses. Where did I put the
Oh,
hypothesis? What should people know about you as a possibilitarian, I guess, is so like what possibilities have you revealed in your life so far? What have you discovered? What have you found? Picasso said, nobody cares what you're searching for. No one is interested in the person who's like walking along the beach looking for stuff. They want to know what you found.
hmm.
So what have you found so
Yeah,
far?
I've found a
You
lot of
found
lessons
customers,
through.
you support yourself, you've already started creating your life to some degree.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I
You
think
found,
I found myself being able to get in touch with my heart and lead from the heart. And that's what it's all about.
all right. So what's a good way to introduce you?
Winding journey through user experience design and product management and many personal and professional
Uh,
challenge. I've found ways to sustain my soul.
yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Deep.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
Yes.
All right, let's do this. Hi, I'm Dave Gray, founder of the School of the Possible, where we're exploring a new approach to learning. Most schools focus on teaching existing facts. In the School of the Possible, we focus on possible facts, things that do not yet exist, but could be so. The school is about creating the future, but it is rooted in the present. No matter who you are or where you are, there is a best next step for you. A step that you can take. A step toward a better, more fulfilling, more meaningful life and work. A step toward a better world. That's the art of the possible. The art of the best next step. And it starts now. Welcome to the Art of the Possible. I am your host, Dave Gray, and with me today is my friend, Lizz Bacon. Liz is a possibilitarian. We're going to talk to her about the art of the possible, how she's created possibilities in her own life, how she's learned to create customers and create opportunities and create her own tree of possibilities in her own life.
Mhm.
Liz is patterning her heart because she feels that it's very important to follow your heart, and that is the path that she is on. Welcome, Liz.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be
Welcome to
here.
the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to riff with you.
All right, so let's start here. Let's just start with the art of the possible.
I've been just obsessing about this question since you invited me. And I think there's an art and a science to the possible. And I love that you're calling out the art. When I came to the field of design many years ago, I found that it unified the creative and the analytical parts of myself, right? That it's
Well,
both
so let me
art and
stop you there.
science.
How did you find design? How did you discover design?
I graduated Stanford with an English and French literature degree, which
Okay.
proceeded to leave me writing poetry and living in San Francisco and working as an office manager.
Hmm.
It's really sad.
Hmm.
And I started making, I'm like
But
this
there's no predetermined career path for that major?
English and French literature major
Yeah.
who didn't want to go to grad school and teach, yeah, or go, oh my goodness. So I just, it was like the next day, I'm like, what did I do? And most of the time I studied modern thought and literature. I took art classes, philosophy, comparative religion. I'm just this broad-minded person and love that stuff. I was a couple years into my office manager work and aware that this was not fulfilling my soul. And I had a lot of talents and there were things I could do in the world. And I wrote lists of professions and
So
pros.
you weren't getting the conversations about French literature that you wanted to get out of your
No, I sure
mate?
wasn't. And so it came to this point where I'm like, do I go get a philosophy PhD or go to art school. As I was finishing my master's, it was 1999 in San Francisco. And I put up these neon signs all over South and Market District that said, Stanford grad, design student, needs work. And tear offs of my phone
Wow.
number. I got 60 calls. And one of them was, hey, can you do web programming? I'm like, yes. And I bought a 10-minute guide to HTML at the bookstore. And the next
Mm.
day I passed this little JavaScript test. And then I was a web designer. And that was so when I was still doing my master's, finishing the dissertation like thing that they had there, I got hired at Cooper. And so I joined an interaction design consultancy, a seminal group that gave me this foundational understanding and methods. And you talk design thinking, DNA level introduction to that.
Yeah,
The
tell me
beginning of my
about.
journey.
So yeah, that's interesting. That's landed you right. That's the guy who Alan Cooper, right?
Uh-huh.
Who invented the idea of personas and
Popularized them. Yeah, created
popularized them.
also popularized interaction design.
That like our brain, it landed you right in the middle of a lot of stuff, huh? I imagine.
Yes, yes.
So tell me about Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper was okay. Cooper came to mind to me just recently when, in one of your collaboratories, the one about finding your purpose and articulating our purpose, Cooper came back to me because I landed in this amazing group of people led by a visionary, practical, pragmatic, but so insightful person that is Alan Cooper. Honored to call him a friend today. And then surrounded by people from all walks of life and all sorts of career paths, because there wasn't a degree in interaction design. These were people who were working in these areas and seeing the problems and wanted to do things differently. And that was Alan's whole thing, is don't have the engineers be responsible not only for code correctness and the elegance and durability of the system and pleasing users. This is too much, right? There's a whole job here for interaction design. But Cooper came to mind in your purpose session because you said, take yourself back to a place where you felt that sense of purpose and where you're surrounded by people with purpose. And Cooper was a wonderful environment where, yes, we were consulting and I worked on SAP projects more than any other project. They were the
Oh
big
wow.
whale client in those years before 2000, but in such a way that like Hasso Plattner,
I
CEO
think
of
their
SAP,
software is still in 2000, actually.
yes, but they drank the Kool-Aid. He funded the D school at
Yeah,
Stanford,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so even and I still say today, I carry the torch, the bright torch of design, research and design, customer centered, into all these dark corners. Like we were on a mission to change the way we talk about designing software and bringing it back to people, right? Goal directed design, these kinds of things. So Cooper was absolutely fantastic and an example of the art of the possible, where one of my core tools today is still the scenario based approaches to design that I learned. So, like telling stories. Like, how do you manifest a future? You've articulate it, you draw it out. And scenarios rather than stories is maybe a more technical term, so it brings the science and some rigor into it. But that, yeah. So Cooper just it's also deep in my heart and a place that I just found community. And that's where your purpose and your school of the possible feels like a similar sort of space that we're creating, where we're all passionate about what we do and we're coming from all these different walks of life. But what unites us is a sense that something better is possible. We've got
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot to do on many fronts. And it's so much more powerful when we can do that with like-minded people and feel like we're part more of a community and a movement, right? You're possibilitarian. I was going to call that
Sure.
out.
So what's a possibilitarian? What would you say? What does that mean to you?
It means a lot of things. Okay, so one of the things that, and I know you'd appreciate this, is I think a possibilitarian is poised for takeoff. All right. You've
Okay.
you're strapped in, you're ready to take advantage of those winds of purpose. You're poised and you've got your team waiting to help, but you're on the edge of uncertainty, right? You're on this cliff event, but you're poised. And you're going to let the winds of purpose take you where you need to go. And you're ready to surf and you don't know what the wind's invisible. It's where are you going to go? So a possibilitarian's poised for takeoff. What's the stance, right? We're on
Mhm.
both feet. We are balanced. We have an equal, we're ready to respond to the things around us because we're grounded and we're able to flex and move with it. It's a dance of possibilities.
And how do you figure out what you want?
Whoa. How do we figure out what we want? I think that's a very individual question, obviously, since we all probably want slightly different things. How do we figure it out? It's
We talked about purpose a while back, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
said that when you were at Cooper, you felt like you had that feeling you were in the
yeah,
right place
yeah.
at the right time with the right people doing the right things. And what was it that you said you were bringing a torch into dark places?
What's interesting, I just had a great conversation with another possibilitarian, Scott Wolfson, about yeah, the difference between your purpose, your vision, and your mission. And
Okay.
so what I think I found at Cooper was my mission is to make the world a better place. And that was through the design of software. And it might sound ridiculous, but
No.
hello, look at how incredibly impactful technology's been to our lives over the last 20 years. There's a lot of meaning and vision necessary when we are creating new technologies. So it's like backing that up. And what I found at Cooper, yeah, I'm making the world a better place. And then the vision for that and the ways in which that manifests have changed at different points in my life.
Are you still on a mission to do that through software or
Oh yeah, but
yeah?
also but bigger. It's gotten, I think that one of the things for me, I've entered a new era in my life recently. Age, experience, circumstances, you name it. And I'm calling it my writing era. And I really do want to make the world a better place, not just through the practices that I've developed and, disseminating. Now I'm at the point of leading teams and disseminating methods and guiding and advising in addition to doing the stuff and putting a label on a button on a screen and I have this note here, beware tangents. Beware tangents for those who are poised, because by God, the winds will be like whoosh. But it's this question of how to know what you want. It's so individual. And for me, the journey of really understanding myself came when I realized I wasn't terribly introspective in all this. And I am a poet, and I would say I discover what I'm thinking and feeling when I read back my poem. It was this outlet for me of my emotions and my subconscious and the greater thing that is creative endeavors. And so I thought this is kind of weak that I can't understand myself unless I write a poem about it and read it back.
Mm.
And I went on a journey to develop mindfulness practices. I dove into Buddhism and started to really recognize that what consciousness is and tune into the signals that are these what are known as the five aggregates, but these thoughts and emotions, right, feelings and sensations in our body that manifest in our mind, turn into thoughts, and on the grounds of consciousness, there's this Buddhist concept that every single thing that we encounter will generate in us either a positive reaction, a negative reaction, or a neutral reaction. Right? And more often we have a positive or a negative. I want that. That repels me. Everything that we encounter, if you look at it, you can classify your reaction to it, positive, negative, or neutral. And mindfulness practices, which work to build that poisedness, this equilibrium, right? That we can flex with, oh, I'm pulled towards that, I'm repelled from this, that we can more quickly find that center, right? And have maybe non-judgment about my positive reaction to this does not mean I run out and buy one. My negative reaction to this situation does not mean I shut down, avoid it, and escape. And finding out what you want is an interior journey where you understand your thoughts, recognize them, discriminate, be discriminating those feelings. Feelings aren't facts, but they are information. And so it's that journey of self-understanding is what's going to reveal what you really want.
You don't start a consultancy and end up supporting yourself without having a desire to do something. It didn't happen by accident.
Yeah, but kickstarting my consultancy was circumstances came to me and I capitalized on them. It was like, to
So
your point,
tell me about that.
yeah, to your point, like the being a possibilitarian is thinking about what's the next best move. I think that's really significant. So when it came to starting my consultancy, I had been working at St. Jude Medical for about 5 years, 5.5 years. And I had become a remote employee back in 2005, which is early, right? So, and I was central to many things. I was a senior human factors design engineer at a medical device company making implantable pacemakers and defibrillators. And I created the team, I introduced research, design, evaluative methods, was the lead designer on this platform that interrogates the devices and you use it. Really amazing stuff, Dave. And that's actually where I developed the mission to work in healthcare and health tech because the work was so meaningful. I was making a real difference in people's lives. It wasn't just this marketing solution. And yes, I can make a call center agent's life less obnoxious, their work less obnoxious on our SAP system. But this touched my heart and was like, I'm like, this is what I want to do is work in healthcare.
Snickers and defibrillators touched your heart.
They did. I know. How beautiful. Thank you, universe, for giving me the jokes and patterns. Can you make it more literal? So I said then I want the rest of my career to be in this domain. And to the extent I've tried, mostly have succeeded. But I had become a remote employee. And as central as I was, guess what happened? Reorg up here. Mm-hmm. And a VP was like, what the heck do we have one remote employee for? Snipped me off. And it was another layoff, my second layoff. Cooper ended in a layoff as the dot-com bust nearly took out the whole consultancy, which it didn't, which was good. So
what'd you do after the first layoff?
After Cooper? Oh, yeah. I went to St. Jude Medical. They had been my client. And within 4 days, I had a job at St. Jude Medical. So it was pretty sweet. Yeah. So again, possibilities capitalized, boom. And anyways, so I'm laid off from St. Jude Medical. And it was like, what? We can't do this without Liz. And I was like, hey, I'm going to start a company. You can hire me back as a consultant. And within a week, I had a company and my first client. And they were my client for another 1.5 years as I led the work as a consultant, making twice as much money, slightly less hours a week. And
so that VP didn't really save them anything, did it?
No, it didn't save them anything. And it's funny, I was reflecting on St. Jude. It was Fortune 100 company, Fortune 500 company, sorry, Fortune 500. And I still have connections to the colleagues and folks that I worked with there. Just they pop up on Facebook all the time. And I watch Ada taking hikes in Colorado and Mary's a painter and Monique's doing her data stuff. I made some amazing connections. And so, hello, I took advantage of lemons. I made some really delicious lemonade. So that actually carried me. That was 2007 to 2009, carried me through the Great Recession, which was very fortunate.
It strikes me that there is a habit in there, which is be useful.
Yes.
Or I don't know if it's be useful, be friendly, but the fact that you had a client, when you're in a consultancy, you had a client that wanted to hire you because they liked working with you. Maybe you have some ideas about why they liked working with you. Maybe I'm making assumptions by saying, okay, be likable, be useful. Those are two things that have served me well for sure.
Oh yeah. It's relationships, Dave.
Tell me more.
We're human. We're built for relationship. We're built to connect. And this takes form in many different ways. It's a massive spectrum, right? In terms of how we're wired and what connection looks like and what we're all about, but it is fundamental to who we are. This idea. So the course and the book that I'm writing that will be in your school, The Possible, at some relatively future soon moment it's talking about the skills of socialization and alignment, But those are just my business tool entree to the
Mhm.
conversation about how we work well with others, how we sustain ourselves and make this a far more joyful, productive, and positive experience of working together on complex things that we do. And so I think those stories, it's about relationships. I connected to the person at St. Jude Medical who was able to create a rec and bring me in and launch it because I had proven myself, right? Awesome.
Mhm.
But then even consider that in that moment. So he took advantage of that possibility. And then, yeah, with St. Jude Medical, everyone I worked with loved working with me and needed me, and we worked well together, and let's carry that on. Who cares what the structure is? It didn't matter to anybody except probably the guy writing the checks. So, yeah, it's people. It's all how we treat others, how we feel about ourselves, how we make others feel.
So let's talk about how you, or if you make that a deliberate practice, how you go about that.
It's not. And that's what's been interesting in coming to working on the materials. And we often discover things when we teach and when you put your thoughts as a sketcher and an information visualizer, right? It's when we put form to things that sometimes we get these insights. And so it's not some like conscious, oh, it's time to exercise the personality and the, relationship things. It
Mhm.
hasn't been like that for me. But as I started to think about the activities of socialization, which are creating shared understanding, building common ground, as you might want to put it, is you socialize yourself, right? Number one, anytime you're in a new environment, you're socializing yourself and you're looking to create some mutual grounds for connection and this and that. And it's authenticity. Like the key element to that is not put on this persona to be accepted. It's how do I express my authentic self in an appropriate way for this context? And when we talk business, it's
Well,
got some boundaries.
I think we all know people who express themselves in ways that are not appropriate to their context.
Yes, yes.
And I think a lot of people do struggle with, okay, how do I know what's appropriate?
Mhm.
And I think some people maybe even struggle with this idea of expressing themselves.
Yeah.
People spend a lot of
Mhm.
time fitting in
Right,
the workplace, and
right.
it's not necessarily all encouraged or natural to stand out to express yourself.
Indeed. When I had the good fortune to be
Hmm.
recruited and work in Australia for about a year and a half in a large organization there. And in Australia, they talked about the tall poppy
Yeah, I've heard
reaction.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in Australia, it is very dangerous to stand up above the rest and be the tall poppy and shine your light and attract attention in these ways. It is seen as something really not cool and time to lop off the tall poppy. And so you're at a lot of risk to put yourself out there or take this leadership role. And I thought to myself, whew, maybe it's a good thing I grew up in America where like
Mhm.
we're pushing each other to stand taller and shine your light harder and
Well,
represent the cultures in which we grow up inform this. It's really absolutely part of the conversation. And for me, I think in the question of socializing yourself in a corporate environment and that line of authenticity, actually at the pilot workshop that I did for this, that you encouraged us to do in the course creation course, I got challenged on this point about authenticity. And a friend of mine said, what if a person's authentic self is racist? I do not want them bringing
mm,
that to bear in the conversation. And so
yeah.
she said, it's maybe instead of authenticity, we can talk about respect, right? And so there, and this is complex territory. And honestly, I'm relatively new to the discourses of organizational psychology and these questions that we're talking about, but I have a lot of lived experience and wisdom of various sorts. Respect is essential. Authenticity is essential because we're in a marathon, not a sprint in this question,
Mhm.
right? If we
Yeah.
want a profession, if we are going to be working to support ourselves for our life, and that's the capitalist reality that we're in, we need to find ways that are durable, sustainable, right? So it's sustaining ourselves, having sustainable practices as humans in these environments. So authenticity, yes. Respect, yes. And then it's that contextual awareness, right? The culture fit. And so so you came out of a culture in your youth and how you grew up and got socialized into ways of behaving. Now you're in a culture of an organization or team or group. What's that culture? And so it's like a lot of listening. And I think that's one of the characteristics of a possibilitarian. It's dialogue. It's not some singular, you got your purpose. You're going to be the one flying your trajectory. In the end, we born and die alone, right? But it's going through things and sensing, listening, like seeing that someone is having a positive reaction, a negative reaction, or a neutral reaction. What reaction did you
Yeah.
want? Are
I
you
think there's a
leaving?
lot of pushback these days on this. Things go in waves, but I think these days
Mhm.
there's a lot of pushback on. There was a whole in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a whole thing that you might call, I guess you might call it today, bro culture.
Oh,
It was very playful. It was very, let's throw away all the rules, but it was also very male and very
mhm,
dorm room-ish. And
mhm.
so I think some of what's happening today is a kind of a maybe even an overreaction to all that stuff that says, okay, let's not try and make work fun. We're here to do work. Let's respect each other. Let's give each other our space. And then you have this whole phenomenon of quiet quitting, probably not unrelated to this idea of, yeah, just respect me and let me do my work. And also, by the way, I might just tune out because it's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of you get to have your cake and eat it too when you say, "Oh, respect me," because I need to just I don't make me put my video on when I come to meetings, but I'm
Mm,
still going to work for home. And
mhm.
I think there's a lot of wiggle room in a lot of that stuff that sometimes people can take advantage of. And I think yeah, it's super complicated.
It
What's,
is. It's
you know,
very nuanced.
yeah,
And there's a lot packed into what you're talking about there. I don't think we're past bro culture in too many places,
yeah,
in the sense of it being a boys' club
hmm
and feeling like masculine values are the only values. And this is not a solved issue in our business world or
right, yeah,
or our world.
absolutely not,
The corrections being made to create more inclusive environments and mitigate this broness with something more egalitarian is very valid. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're not trying to eliminate fun from this endeavor or just be automatons who, respect me as a worker but
right,
ignore the rest of my personality. That is not sustainable either. And that's where, I posted about quiet quitting makes a ton of sense when you've been burned, you've been through your third layoff and you're being asked to give more with
Mhm.
no reciprocity from the enterprise. Yeah, disengage, pull back, don't give it your all because they don't deserve it. They don't deserve me. But at the same time, don't we all seek purpose? Don't we all need those relationships? What if we could find the grounds and the shared grounds on which we can be playful with each other? Militarians are playful. Like,
Yeah,
that all work. There's a lot of play in it. The yes and the collaborations. And like for me, it's learning the drums. In the last 5 years, I've become a drummer. And do I have much musical talent? No, sir, I don't think I do. Has it been easy? No, it's an incredibly difficult learning journey. But one of the things for me, and being a perfectionist, right, and having this level of skill in these endeavors, it's like my high performance driving actually, where I got to, near the top of the mountain, but here I am in drumming at the bottom of the mountain, climbing these cliffs. And one thing for me was, hey, we don't work music. I'm gonna go work some music. We play music, right? It's playful, it's listening, it's improvisatory, it's back and forth, it's wherever you are. There's no such thing as a mistake. Play it twice and it's jazz. Kinds of things. I don't know. We need a lot of corrections in business culture from, I think, some really broken values and judgmental attitudes and non inclusive type environments. But don't throw the fun out.
I think that's like when you say authenticity and respect go hand in hand. I can see
Mhm.
that being like a little bit of a lever, gas pedal and a brake. I think the very fact that culture can be nebulous can be a problem.
Yeah.
You say, what if there's a lot of people who will say, okay, yes, we have a culture, but it's a toxic culture or it's not a
Yeah.
good
There you
one.
go.
And so
Whoa.
culture can make bad behavior excusable. It can even make it
Yes.
laudatory. Culture can be reasons for all kinds of malfeasance or problems. And for some people, you want to see them express themselves more. Some people, you want to see them express themselves less. And so, how do you? I think it's becoming a very difficult world for a lot of people to navigate. I think, in some ways, I think it's more difficult for everybody.
Yes. When we're in a time of transition as a society, as a planet. We're coping with things much bigger than just we're responsible for or that we can fix on our own. For me, I think that as I'm working and sharing these ideas, socialize yourself, culture fit, authenticity, quiet quitting, there's an alternative. That's not the thing either. I'm proposing to call these, instead of mindsets, I'm talking about heart sets. So, our emotional attitudes that can sustain our souls and fuel better outcomes and whatnot. And so there's this challenge in having a conversation where I'm saying, bring yourself, right? Bring some joy, bring some levity to the conversation as you're authentically yourself and respect others and demonstrate kindness and these sorts of things. If you're not going to talk about leveling the hill, that it's not. So my thesis is the only thing we can possibly really control, and only with great difficulty, is ourselves, right? How can I create this equilibrium to stay poised and find a balance between hope and fear and love and hate and the positive and the negative polarities in my theory of mind? And then how does that radiate out? Does it radiate out? Or what if kindness is met with cruelty? Oh, then bring forgiveness. Okay, and then you're forgiven, then you're fired. The power structures are pretty confounding in all this. And that's why possibilitarians are a collective. This is a movement. And even as the change and the insights and the tools can only come from the one. This is all I am, right? Is this one right here, right now, anyways. So I do these things. I'll model this. I'll show the better outcomes. Attract good people. And the outcomes proliferate, right? And maybe I'll get laid off again because business conditions, they didn't know me. And it's just that. But I have the inner strength and the sense of purpose and compassion for someone who had to make a tough decision like that in this business climate, and carry on, right? And try again. And so the possibilitarian, we're part of a movement. We're all working towards these same changes and this systemic improvement in the conditions and improving those contexts through all kinds of means, right? Top down, bottom up, side to side, share
Well,
these concepts, shame the people who are behaving badly. We are seeing some good corrections.
take us back to that time in your life where you were an office manager and you were not happy with your work,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm sure you still showed up smiling in the morning. That's probably just who you are. Okay.
Mostly, yeah.
Take us back to that time and talk to me about how do you start. I have a guy that I mentor and we talk about his career and where he's at. And like when I first started talking to him, it was just about just being able to breathe, just being able to have the space to breathe. So
Mm.
sometimes if you don't feel like you have a floor underneath you, you don't feel like where your next dollar is going to come
Oh,
from
yeah.
or your next meal or
Yep.
whether you have a place to sleep. Sometimes it's just about being able to feel like you can
Yep.
stop and breathe and are able to think.
Yep. Well,
Um,
this is a great question, and I'll add in a segue I meant to make earlier, and my brain's running a mile a minute, is in that question of like how you introduce yourself in a context and how contextual it is, and what if it's a toxic culture, and I think really significant to being a possibilitarian is mapping the territory. And I know this will resonate with you, right? Mapping the territory. that we're on and that we're dealing with. A possibilitarian isn't you're not wildly shooting from the hip, uninformed as to where you are and who's out there and what's going on. You are sensing, you are understanding, you are developing models, you are assessing the context in order to know what the next best step is. And in a toxic context, that next best step might be goodbye. And it's definitely boundaries and these kinds of things. When I was an office manager, I mapped my territory. What am I about? What do I value? What am I good at? Where do I want to go? What do I prioritize for a lifestyle? And so it was mapping that territory. And then when I was fortunate to have this crystalline insight and skies parted and like angels sang, like it was a moment. I know I can picture myself in that little studio in the Tenderloin where I made that paper, and it's in my book because I keep a ephemera. And then it was the discipline to pursue that.
And you pursued that while you kept your office job?
No, I did not. I did not. I went full-time master's degree student, and they did let me have part-time hours at the office where I'd been working. It was a property management firm. And it's funny you say I showed up smiling, because in the 9 months that I kept my foot there and to have some income, I had the good fortune also. I moved in with my then boyfriend and got some support there, and I started paying rent. And we ended up getting married and having a kid, so that was great. But she said, the owner of the firm, she's like, "You just aren't smiling as much as you used to, Liz." And I was like, "Yes, I'm not where I need to be right now." Like I've moved on in my heart, and I thank you for keeping me employed in this way, but my heart's not here anymore. And telling her that I found my calling in design and I can't wait to get there, and I'm not there. And it was around that time that I did that flyer and ended up getting a web designer role. And then I was off to the races, and I was doing part-time design work and projects while I went to school. But the discipline and the time, and that schooling took 2.5 years. Even a little longer, because I put finishing my dissertation on hold to get married. And so life is what it is, but keeping on. Very little happens overnight, right? So you're mapping the territory, you're knowing where you've been, you're having a sense of where you could go, and then you're charting a course, and you're reacting to all the things coming at you. I know you like this metaphor, right? We're sailing our ships into the seas of the unknown, and my winds of purpose are at my back, but there's a storm a-brewing, right? All the freaking Great Recession was a heck of a storm in my medical device career and my progression up that career ladder. Boom. How about I be self-employed? How about I keep doing this work on my own terms, and no one's going to lay me off? So exactly where I am again. I want to be in charge of my own destiny. And what does that mean?
Yeah. So if you were to think about your personal habits and routines and how you go about doing what you do, what would you say is the most essential habit for you in generating possibilities? I mean, what would you say that you come back to over and over that helps you create the possibilities that you want to see in your life or in the world?
I turned to look at my list of heart sets. I'm like, the answer is one of those.
Okay.
And I'll share my theory of mind real quick, if you don't mind, which is I had this insight that when it comes to our heart and our emotions and these states, there's more. We talk love and hate sound like opposite emotions, but how often do we come to hate something we love? Or there's this, if you think of emotions are end to end, but they're not like this at other ends. It's like a circle. Love and hate are right next to each other as these intense emotions. And at the far side of that is indifference, right? That's far more different than love and hate. Love and hate are very similar. So I have, and these like magnetic polarities, I see them as these circles, and I see through my meditation practice, which is really critical, but it may not be the answer to your question. I've seen how emotions emerge. I've seen thoughts emerge from the grounds of consciousness and then recede and they go away, that everything is always changing. There's nothing constant on this planet, nothing at all. not even yourself. And Buddhist plus my theory of mind. I know you're very visual. You could even, I've started to see it not as two-dimensional spectrums of emotions, but if you collapse it on itself, then you have this ring, and now I see it as a sphere. Okay, so there's this sphere of emotions, and love and hate, and these intense emotions. Hope and fear is another one. And in the polarities, fear is the killer. Fear shuts down our creativity. It seems to limit possibilities. And its opposite is hope. When we have hope, something can happen. Even out of the worst moment we're in, the worst tragedy we've ever had, hope can pull us out. But even more than hope, I think for me, it's the lesson and the mantra that came to me after some really significant personal adversity. About 6 years ago now, almost exactly 6 years ago, my father breathed his last breath, and 6 weeks later, my husband died of cancer.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and bam, the two most important men in my life. And my husband was not my daughter's dad. She still has her dad. So was my second husband. And in the unimaginable grief, I'd never lost anyone this close to me. And then boom. And so grief is a tsunami. It's a swamping wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could have succumbed, right? I could have been sucked under. And somehow the things around me, certainly having my daughter at 11, we were at Jeffrey's bedside when he passed together, and she was there like cheerleading me on. And I ran across this sign. I do ecstatic dance also, so I love dance and especially somatic expression. And I was walking by a place that I would do dance stuff, and there was this poster for a grief workshop, a movement workshop to work with your grief. And I'm like, whew, I could use that. And I signed up and I went to this movement workshop for grief led by this amazing, grief counselor. And it was there were altars and there were this and the movement and expressing. And it's in that 2 hour, 2.5 hours, whatever it was, I felt the literal alchemy of my grief transforming into gratitude. I was like, the only reason I am grieving so hard is because I loved so hard. And what a gift to have a father like that and a husband like that I can be grieving this hard to lose them. And so it was like, for me, what came out of it, the mantra that crystallized was accept and let go. That it wasn't resisting the grief, it was embracing the grief and transforming it through the incredible filter that is our heart and mind and soul, that I found this gratitude, this well of gratitude. Many people have had this insight. It's not unique to me, that the flip side of grief is love, and love is grief. And if you love, you will grieve, because all things are impermanent. All things are impermanent, Dave. So that can be like, this too shall pass. Usually we say that to each other when something bad's happening. What if you start saying that when something good's happening? This too shall pass. And that's the truth. And it's just never ending. So for me, the mantra, accept and let go. It's both of them. It's accept. Oh, what a loss. What a horrible place to be. What a terrible experience. I can accept that this is what's happening. And I can let go of wanting it to be other. And you do it again and again. And the universe does nothing but present you opportunities to accept and let go. And so for me, the foundational heart set is acceptance. Because without acceptance, you can't map your territory. You can't see anything because you don't know where you are. You're pushing back, you're resisting. You just can't do anything with it unless you start with acceptance. So that's the one.
But there's two things there: accept and let go.
And let go. Yeah. Yeah. I think the let go is often forgotten when we talk about acceptance, but for me, it's the codicil of everything always changes, right? It's accept that and then let it go. That's not static either. It's the iterative quality of this life and this learning and this journey that we're on. as possibilitarians looking for our next best move.
Do you have thoughts about how I have thoughts, but I want to hear yours of how this habit of accepting and letting go. Do you have a theory about how that generates possibilities or how that
Yeah,
translates to
yeah, because
possibilities?
yeah, so I think it's about it's the mindset of iteration and the mindset of experimentation, right? So I think as designers or anyone who's led a workshop or this and that, it's the how might we? How might we? And you open up these things. And that's really this awesome forward iteration stuff. And but how might we is a little bit fluffy and it might leave out because it's forward looking. It's like, how do we do this thing? And when I was thinking about, I was framing, working on the course for the School of the Possible, and I was starting to formulate some of these things. Is it possible that? And the formulation of, is it possible that? Leads itself into a way of looking at your problem as a hypothesis or an assumption or something that you can test, something you can work with. And so it's the possibilitarian in this, okay, accept this. Is it possible that's because? Is it possible that leads to, right? You have this incredible framing for both looking at the causes and exploring what could be, right? And making it better.
Mhm.
It's actually super, super powerful. So it's fuel for experiments. It's fuel for, why don't we try this? And all of it's predicated on accepting what is. But then like, well, why? Is it because of this? And I assume that, and they're going to come up with this hypothesis and I could get more concrete. But yeah,
Sometimes, like you said, everything's always changing. How do you
there you
even know
go.
what is?
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
a lot of times that's part of what, for me, the possibilitarian thing is about is, well, how do you know that it's impossible for me to blah, blah, blah? How do you know that?
yeah. There you go.
How do you know? How do you even know? And I don't think you do know. This
Mm-hmm.
is where I think maybe this is beyond acceptance for me, but you can accept what is and let it go. And then what? Because part of what I feel like exploring possibilities requires is for you to make moves without
That's
knowing.
right.
You
That's
know,
right.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I was thinking this morning when I was writing in my journal about this, what is possibilitarian or what is a possibility? Possibility
Mm-hmm.
is a choice that you have about an action you could take
Yep.
or something you could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're, a lot of people run their lives on routine, on habit, on autopilot, I guess you could say, which is a way for you to free up your brain to think about other things while you're driving
Yes.
to work or whatever.
Yes.
But it also shuts down possibilities when you run on autopilot. For example, there's lots of things you could do on your way to work. You could stop and get donuts for everyone else in the office, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
That's just
I
one
like
of
that.
probably thousands of possibilities. And but what happens if you take that option, you go, oh wow, I could bring in donuts. Then you have all these other options. I could just drop the donuts in the lobby. I could
Mm-hmm.
walk around. I could go to my favorite people first with the best donuts. And then like I could, there's all kinds of different possibilities, but
Went
none
over
of
that
them,
grumpy guy in accounting.
right? Or I could go to the people I want something from or whatever. Um, but there, none of those possibilities would even be there if you hadn't
Action.
first stopped for donut.
Taken the action.
You don't even have to know. One way that I think someone might interpret this idea of accept and let go is, well, accept that I have this drive to work. It's going to take me an hour and let
Mm-hmm.
go and just drive to work and not think about it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
part of what creates possibilities is paying attention to what's going on in the moment,
Yes.
some degree of allowing yourself to be spontaneous.
Yes.
You might pick up donuts without even knowing what you're going to do next, just
Yep.
because you see the donut store. It's like, oh, maybe I'll get some donuts. And once you're in, maybe obviously once you're in a donut store, there's no point in just buying one donut. You got to buy a dozen. So then you walk, whatever.
Yep.
So I think there's maybe there's something about just letting go of your autopilot.
Right.
Um,
You're poised. You're poised for action. A possibilitarian is ready to act at any moment. And I think it's essential The opposite of a possibilitarian is a static figure not moving,
Hmm.
right? Possibilities are movement, possibilities are exploration, possibilities are play, possibilities are moving out of the comfort zone, whatever that is, into the unknown. Yeah, I think that's one of those qualities. It's movement. There's some action to take and sensing as you take it. Is this a right action? How's this working? How's this feeling? What's the reactions?
Mapping.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask
mapping.
you, when you sit down to map your territory, mapping to me implies that you have a piece of paper and you're thinking about it.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Could
how
be.
do you go about when you were in that office environment? You said you spent some time mapping the territory that you're in, right? Where you are, what's going on, developing models. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about how you do that?
It's very contextual to the kind of problem that I'm looking at. One context where, for me, like that insight and how that plays out is my high performance driving context, which is a weird one. It's not businessy. In high performance driving, I would take my Porsche Cayman to the track, and these are road courses to 1.5, like 1.8 miles, Oregon Raceway Parks, I think 2.3. I don't know, I'm getting the numbers wrong. But you're going around and around known territory in a known vehicle that you've set up for this activity. And every single moment you're on that track, you have the possibility to do one thing or another. How much steering input am I going to give it? How much throttle? How much gas? Where are my
Mhm.
eyes? What am I thinking? What's my goal? And the activity, so I did very little competition stuff at the track. It was these formats called driver's education. And then I ended up, actually, I'm a certified high performance driving instructor, Dave, if you ever want some
Okay.
tips. But so I'd work with people in these events. And then I got working on my own skills. I'm like, I'm really going to perfect it to where I was like eking out zero point 0.1 seconds was a great lap versus the other. So we're in high precision territory where I would keep a log of, for instance, I'm going to play with the possibilities of tire pressure. And so I'm going to take 3 laps, and you have cold tires and then warm tires. You can't have 2 hot tires. And so there's like all these things. But what if I drop, a pound in front? What if I add a pound in back? What if I da da da? And I'll have days where I'm just playing with the possibilities, these controlled parameters and like those variables at play, and keeping logs and tracking it and making notes about how it felt. And did it slide? Did it slip? And then of course, can you even control your experiment? And like there's the tire variable, but then there's how tired is Liz? How much water has she had? And what was her steering input doing at corner 2? And
Right.
these things. But so in business, again, super contextual. So am I mapping the territory to understand patient engagement for
Go back to when you're the
yeah.
office manager. Like, how did you map the territory then? I mean,
Um,
that's a great place to start, because that's not a place where you were thinking yet like a designer.
it's so distant from me now. I know that I went through an activity of what do I value, what am I good at, and what are careers. So it was like these elements of myself, my aptitudes and interests, the ethical principles by which I want to operate, and even then need to make the world a better place through my poetry. I'm not going to pay the bills, so like, my values are
Let's
also
go.
to survive above the poverty line. But what I've been doing on this front is, as I've stood up Devise Consulting here again this summer after a period of being in-house and working for others. So what I'm having to do now that I'm at this point in my career where I'm also entering my writing era, and I really have wisdom and insights that I want to transmit at scale. So I said, a book is one of our most accepted formats in this culture to do this thing. And
Yeah.
then as I was in the midst of that, I ran into the School of the Possible. And boy, who's this super cool weirdo, Dave Graham? And I've followed him for freaking years. And now he's doing this thing. That sounds amazing. And then you launched the course creation course. And I was like, hell yes, this could be a course. Boom. And I show up at your class, and suddenly I'm doing a course. And the course is going to come out before the book does, because duh. So
Well,
like
which is as it should be, because you'll learn more
so much.
by
So
teaching a
thank
course
you.
than you will by writing a book, right?
No doubt. I am absolutely, it's the perfect thing. I'm going to have dialogue with the people and debate these concepts and where is it hard to grasp and where is this so natural and where are the obstacles? And it's going to be a much, much better work from running the course and having these conversations in brilliant community. So I'm mapping my new territory. So I'm a consultant at this level. Now I'm not just user experience and research and design angles. I'm a product strategist and I'm a product management leader. I'm an executive. I have led delivery. I've led innovation. I've redefined processes. I've hired. I've run teams, on and on. This is a new place from which I can operate devised consulting. How do I do that? And I'll tell you, I'm still mapping that territory. I'm still working on articulating my crisp little value prop. You're trying to get my intro out of me today. I'm like,
Well, but I mean, talk to me about how you do it. Even if you were to take your skills that you have now and go back to that office manager position, how would you start to do it take the tools that you have now as a designer, as someone who's worked in that world for 20 years or so?
Yeah.
How how would you begin to start mapping your territory?
The mission, vision, purpose framework is quite powerful because it's high level enough that it provides the cover for then really a massive variety of activities then to populate your next steps. So I think mission, values, and purpose is a wonderful starting point. Another really good model
What
is that,
just would you just define those for me? Mission?
yeah. And this was, again, thanks to Scott, is your purpose is like why you're doing this thing, but your vision is what you can achieve. And your mission is like the highest level thing. Sorry, I've just spoken backwards. So your mission is, say, make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And your vision is we can all flourish, right? Cooperatively. And then your purpose becomes, I'm going to help people sustain their souls at work. It's this, so it creates the larger picture of what you believe, your picture of what the outcome you're trying to get to. And I think outcomes are really
Is the
central.
vision the outcome?
The vision is, yeah, the outcome, what can be if my mission were fulfilled and my purpose was happening. So that's a really great framework.
And what's the
Um,
mission again? I get confused with all these terms, actually, honestly.
just to think of a hierarchy. So mission is your highest order thing that you're after. Your vision is the outcome that would result from your mission being fulfilled. And then your purpose is your own personal way in which you're pursuing the vision and the mission. So if my, vision is to make the world a better place, our mission is to make the world a better place, and my vision is that we can work harmoniously and joyfully and productively on meaningful problems, my purpose is to help innovate new sustainable solutions for our souls. And then as I mapped that, I'm like, it's at work, and that's this context, but it's also about at play. In our body, it's all these somatic practices that I have and things that sustain my soul are very much outside the work context. My flogging my Cayman at the track and doing that has nothing to do with building a digital product. My having an ecstatic dance experience doesn't either. But those activities are part of what sustain my soul, give me purpose and outlet and ways of manifesting that feed back into everything. So that's a good one. But another model I highly recommend for this is the Ikigai framework, which I only came across over the summer as I was meeting with someone that was their favorite framework for this stuff. I'm like, I'm reinventing my consultancy. Who am I? Product management consulting is pretty new. The field's not super well defined. It feels not unlike the early days of being an interaction designer. And are you an information architect or an interaction designer? And oh God, now there's user experience. So anyways, but the Ikigai framework is one that lets you bubble up and populate this model with different things that give you meaning, that you're good at, so you can make money off of. It triangulates and brings you to some of these things as well.
Although those are more about mapping what you want than where you are. And like when you first talked about mapping your territory, I thought it was really interesting. A lot of what you said was about sensing
Yep.
where you are, what's going on,
But
developing
it's,
models about what's happening and
yes.
why.
Yes.
Um,
And it's layers. Like there's, I wish there was a silver bullet. There's not, because it's the layers of your personal self in your context, in the culture, in the world. And so what frame of reference are you looking to tackle in these questions? And you're going to get different tools and mapping systems and elements at play. I think I got this amazing insight from Brenda Laurel back early days that I was a designer. And it was that any design process worth its salt moves between steps of sequence and components. And I know I'm paraphrasing it. I've internalized this so thoroughly. And so it's true. If you look at design thinking or any whatever, we come together, we have to find the system, find the coherencies between things, and then we got to break it apart and look at the constituent elements. And then we put them back together again. And then we break them apart again and put them back together again. So design does that with its, ideation and brainstorming, and then you model and you prototype and you test that, and then you find this is broken, you take it apart, what's working, you have so things, sequences, scenarios and elements, workflows and screen views, like in software terms. So this is it's the same thing in what we're talking about here. Am I talking about me, the actor, and understanding myself, my values, talents, interests, ethic, that stuff is one kind of mapping. And then the context in which I'm operating. I'm in 2024 in this business climate with these competitors So yeah, I wish there was a silver bullet, but there isn't. There's no one tool to rule them all.
okay.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
thank you, Liz. It's been
Thank you,
wonderful.
Dave. Riff away.
We
Riff-tastic.
appreciate your time.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us on The Art of the Possible. To learn more and discover your best next step, come visit us at schoolofthepossible.com. See you next time. What brought you to China? How'd you go? You said Australia, China, just threw those in there.
No, Dave, we're going to leave him wanting more. That's for next time. Yeah. Oh, China. My mom came to the States from Europe as an immigrant with her mom from Europe, and found herself raising two children in the suburbs of Chicago and not knowing what the world was all about. And she wanted us to have some international exposure and some kind of experience that would enlighten us to more than just the suburbs of Chicago. And my dad had the opportunity with his company, Honeywell, to go. He was a systems analyst, and he took a 2-year assignment to help Beijing University install mainframe computers. And it's 1983. So China had just barely opened to the West, and we were some of the first people there who weren't missionaries or diplomats. Yeah, we lived in a hotel room at the Friendship Hotel. And my parents like to say that we arrived, China was about 1950, and we left in 1970. In 2 years, they had 2 decades of progress. The Beijing skyline was nothing but giant cranes building and growth. I remember going to the zoo as a family, and I had my little brother's little blonde-headed boy, and they turned away from the pandas and stared at us. It was extraordinary. And we didn't go back to the States for 2 years. We went, I call it my around the world in 2 years trip, because we did Australia, New Zealand. We went back through Italy and Europe and England and Scotland. And hello, I woke up to America's not the center of the universe, and Chicago suburbs certainly aren't either. It's very
good. That sounds like a good thing. I remember being in China. You can imagine I'm 6'6", so me.
Yeah, just a tall poppy.
It was like it was fun. So I went to Shanghai 2012 or somewhere around there, 2014. Anyway, it was like that. Except people were pretty friendly. They were like wanting to get their picture taken with me.
Indeed.
China American something. Yeah. Hey, can I? And I didn't speak their language, and they didn't speak mine, but I could tell when somebody wants to take their picture.
Yeah, smile does wonders. Yeah.
Thank you, Liz, for your time.
Likewise. Dave. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing this come out. Let me know if you need anything else.
Will do.